Okay, here we go then. The last race of the day, it's all to play for. Race 2, it all comes down to the next 14 laps. And away they go. Now, and there's Darren spinning out as well. Darren, there's contact there, push Kieran wide. Oh, but he's gone off. What's going on? Shane's also there in the BMW. Oh, nearly loses it. Kieran's going to have to slow down. No, he's gone too much. It's Josh here, and he is leading. This is fantastic for Josh. Oh, a bit of a love tap. And Josh, oh my God, who's going to take it? I think it's Darren. I think it's going to be Rob. Rob gets it. He's actually on the grass. This isn't good for Tom. And he's made the move. Look at that. Through Eau Rouge. Oh, that's Mike. Mike's gone off. Oh, Craig sideways. Big time. Is it going to be enough? No, Sam takes it and takes the title ahead of Tom. The grid then for race 2 here at Brands Hatch. Craig Kellett, of course, is on the front row of the grid and pole position again in the Nissan GTR of Elite Racing. Tom Foster in the K-Tech Racing Subaru WRX is next to him, with Mike Kuipers in the Nissan GTR and Stephen Heath in the Subaru WRX on row 2 behind them. Row 3 is Mark Nicol in the Renault Megane. Next to him is Rob Pellet in the Nissan GTR of Elite Racing. Row 4 is the Lexus RCF of Gary Black and Kieran Thomas of the K-Tech Racing Subaru WRX. Row 5 is Josh Hardy in the Renault Megane and Joe Burrows in the Mazda Atenza, and of course at the back row of the grid is Harry Cook in his Nissan GTR after retiring in race 1. Okay, race 2 then. 1 down, 2 to go. And Craig Kellett, of course, is on pole position again, but Tom is now on the front row with him, and away they go. So everyone gets another clean getaway, but that's a good move from Stephen Heath to go into second, and that's already someone off in the background that looks like Rob and Gary. So not quite entirely sure what happened there, but it doesn't look too bad. They both get back onto the tarmac and continue at the back there. So here's Mike and Stephen, and they continue on as they were in race 1. Of course, there will be differences of tyre strategy in this race, with the hards of Josh Hardy and Kieran Thomas being now on softs, and Tom is on hards, as well as a few others like Mike and Mark. But Craig has decided to stay on the softs, I believe. Let's have a look at the start again and find out what happened with Rob and Gary. They all get a decent start as we follow Rob. It looks like Kieran's made the contact. Gary seemed to go off on his own and follow Rob. I'm not sure where the contact come from initially, maybe. Let's go on board with Kieran and see if there's any contact initially before he went into Rob. So he gets a good start. There's Rob ahead. There was. It looks like it might have been Mark. Let's go on board with Mark then and find out what happened with Mark. So Mark struggles to get away naturally, as the Renaults do. Yeah, it was, unfortunately, was Mark. There was even more contact with Gary at the back. So at the moment it's all quite conservative, clean, and oh no, saying that's Gary who's fallen behind. So something must have happened to Gary. Watching from the back here then, here's Harry Cook, who is behind Tom. Tom has already dropped down to 7th after the first few initial corners, struggling on the hards. And that looks like Mike and Josh getting very close there. And Josh already looking very, oh, that's Kieran, bit of contact there, slightly pushes Stephen Heath wide. That's Heathy again coming back on the track. Oh, contact there with Harry. So Stephen is really struggling to get back on the track here. And once he's pushed wide, it's very hard to get back on the track. Behind him is Mark and Rob having a bit of a tussle for the back here at 9th and 10th. So Joe's gone up to 5th, which is a big improvement. And there's Mike nearly losing it. So Josh already up to 2nd now. Already making headways up to Craig. And as you can see, whoa, Craig nearly losing it on those hards. It's my apology. It's I was wrong. Craig is actually on hard tyres. He's not on the softs. So very, very close here as Josh decides to go on the outside of Craig here. Oh, a bit of a push and shove. So that's actually slowed him down. That's allowed Kieran here to get very close behind. So this is an interesting battle here for the lead. And Craig is naturally going to potentially go back further down, and it's actually looking very, very tight there as Kieran runs slightly wide on the grass. Never really was going to have enough space for all of them to go around that corner, but Kieran lucky to get away with that with just a minimal touch of the grass. So at the moment it looks like it's going to be Kieran and Josh for the fight at the front. Joe has managed to make his way up to 4th now, so some good progress for Joe. Further down is Tom in 6th, Heathy in 7th, Mark and Rob still battling down further down, and we've obviously got Gary and Harry. So there's something that's happened to Harry, not quite sure, but fortunately Harry's had issues all throughout this meet, and hasn't quite got them under control yet. So on board with Kieran, and Kieran's not yet managed to get past the Nissan of Craig. As they come up to the hairpin turn 2 here at Brands on lap 4 already. Kieran making a robust move and is now on the outside and has to slot in back behind Craig. So Kieran is struggling to get past Craig at the moment. Further down we've got a battle here that's hotting up between Mike and Tom now, both on the hard tyres. Of course Tom is in the teams, so isn't really in the fight for the independents, but of course he could throw a spanner in the works for Mike. And the difference between finishing ahead and behind someone is about 2 points to 4 points, and even more and even greater, so it could mean the difference between winning and losing a championship. Of course Tom and Mike are fighting it out between themselves in the actual overall driver's title for that 2nd, 3rd and 4th, with Darren, who isn't here. Now we've got a battle between Mark and Stephen. Stephen Heath really struggled to get himself under control after the first few laps here, and has managed to settle, but unfortunately, as I say that, the commentator's curse puts him into the gravel. So that's Mark up to 7th now. So Mark is on the hard tyres, is making some great headway into another decent result, and this is really good for Mark. And unfortunately, naturally, he's going to be behind the other two in the results here, so it really is going to bore down to that last race. So Craig now behind Joe, so Joe has made a great jump ahead of Craig, and Craig is now starting to feel the difference in those hard tyres. Joe on the grass. And And Craig still fighting to see if he can get that podium. Tom and Mike still fighting for 5th and 6th. And this is now a three-way tussle between Rob, Stephen and Mark. That's Stephen again, just slightly touching the grass, nearly losing it. Stephen nearly doing some rallycross around that first bend. As Rob goes up on the curb, around the corner, and that's Stephen going wide again. There's a fascinating three-way battle going on here. Mark is doing well to defend and holding both the Subaru and the Nissan at bay. We've got three different manufacturers here. This is great to watch at the moment, and that's Stephen who's nearly catching that grass again. So back on board with Rob. And Rob is struggling. Oh, the contact. He's struggling to get past Heathy, who's defending very well. But Rob clearly the faster one here, and it's actually allowing Mark to get a gap now, because Heathy is so focused on defending from the Nissan of Rob. Back on board with Rob. Further up, Tom still behind Mike, and the gap has increased there, so that's not quite as close as what it was before. Craig has lost touch now with the Mazda of Joe, who is a little bit behind Kieran and Josh. So Kieran has got ahead of Josh at the moment. Josh was leading the race, but you can imagine that this race isn't quite going to be over yet. Josh desperate for another win after having a few frustrating rounds recently, but he has the potential, looking very quick already. And what this means for Josh is any maximum points is going to increase his chances of that independence title. He's the current holder of the title, and it's for his to lose, and at the moment he's got a fair challenge ahead of him, and he's at the best possible position currently to give himself the best chance to try and snatch it away from the current leader, which is Mark. And don't forget that Mike is involved in this, and Mike is also doing pretty well in 5th. A nice consistent set of results for Mike if he was to finish here. Again, put himself in the best position. So Mark is just behind here. Let's go on board with Mark. So this is switched around. So Rob's got ahead of Stephen. Stephen stays in 8th, and Mark ends up behind, and that's Rob. Rob's off. So as I say that, Rob unfortunately goes way wide, and what this means is that's allowed Gary to get ahead, get behind these, and Gary's very, very quickly closing and catching. So this is cause for another great battle here mid-pack. On board with Gary. This is fantastic racing, and there's Gary slowly getting the grass, but I think he's got Rob, so he's up to 9th now. So Gary potentially could get past Mark here, and that's Heath. He's gone wide, so that's slowed down Mark, and actually Gary's got ahead of nearly all of them now. Gary has gone on the outside of Stephen Heath, and the Lexus is showing a much stronger performance in these later races of the season. It's just a real shame that it's taken Gary this long to really get the Lexus set up. But saying that, look at this, 4 cars really battling out here. Oh, a bit of contact there. Gary goes wide, Rob goes on the inside, so Rob now taking advantage of this. Oh, Gary's gone and hit the grass, so Gary's gone wide. So Gary's kind of out of the equation. Mark is on the grass as well. So Rob is taking advantage again and is on the inside of Stephen. So Stephen is going to be potentially pushed out wide. Mark is just behind, potentially to take advantage of these two. And Rob goes on the inside, but he takes a second thought and holds back. More fantastic racing here between these three. And Gary earlier on, it's just a shame that Gary's just lost sight of these three after running on the grass earlier on. And there's Stephen running again on the grass. So further up, Tom still behind Mike, a little bit closer. And this could get interesting, but at the moment it's oh, as we say that, I've just seen Heathy going off. Yeah, Heathy's gone onto the gravel, so let's sport that pack there. So Josh on the grass, up for the lead of the race. Really lucky to stay focused, to keep the car going down to the last few laps then. Again, and this could mean the difference between winning and losing the title at the very last lap of the season. We will update you with the points right at the end, of course, of this race and how it will look for our final race. And Josh has got an opportunity here. He's got past Kieran, a little bit of a nudge and another little nudge. So these two are playing the aggressive game, and Kieran says, I'll nudge you back if you keep nudging me like that. Lap 11, 4 laps left. Joe, a very, very decent podium here if he just continues on as he is currently. Craig on his own, Tom and Mike still settled in those positions. Rob now ahead of Mark, who's ahead of Gary, and Heathy really, really struggling now on those tyres. Maybe the setup's not quite right for the Subaru around here. So Kieran again on the outside of Josh. And look how close they are as they go around that first corner at that speed. You've got to be very committed, A, so that you get around the corner and you don't hit the gravel, and B, that you don't hit the person in front of you. And that's Josh who's gone wide. So Kieran has got the position, looks like, and that is, yeah, Josh in the background then. Again, Josh, oh, going for a position that doesn't exist. So that's pushed slightly Kieran wide onto the gravel. Kieran's got some work to do from here. The marshals, not the marshals, sorry, the scrutineers could look at that one. Further down it looks like Gary is involved again. Yeah, so Gary now behind Mark. So Mark down to 8th. that looks just looking quick round here. It's just, again, a shame that he hit the grass earlier, otherwise he could have been further up. Oh! Gary says, there you go. I'll help you out, Mark. Get back on the track. Mark, again, now struggling. So it seems like a few of these guys are struggling on the hard tyres around here. And Gary goes ahead of Mark. Mark is losing positions and ultimately losing points for the independents. So this isn't going to be great for Mark. We obviously knew that he was going to struggle on the hards. But if you look at where Mark is compared to Mike and Josh, it's going to lose him quite a substantial amount. So Tom is now ahead of Mike, so something's happened there. Ultimately, we're looking at this battle here for the lead, and Josh is still leading after Kieran went off slightly, but it was a bit of a push by Josh. You can see the distance then as Kieran goes on to the final lap, and this is his only chance to get past Josh, and he's got some work to do as the distance is a lot bigger than what it was earlier on in the race. There's Craig on the in full position on his own, and there's Mike catching the grass, keeps it going. Rob is a good 7th. There's Gary, there's Mark, and Heathy struggling. Of course, we've lost Harry again, as you can see, and that's probably all down to the more technical issues that have plagued him all season. And I can imagine that Harry will want to go away and come back next season with just an ability to finish races. Pretty awful track record for DNFs this season. Started very well, and it's just unfortunately got worse as the season progressed. So we are now on board with Kieran as we go into the final corners. It looks like Josh is going to take the win unless Kieran can make a last minute dive, and he does. Kieran's got him as a push wide, and Kieran is going to take the win and snatch it away from Josh, but is he? He does. So Kieran wins ahead of Josh in a last corner attempt. Joe will take 3rd, and Josh will be devastated after losing at that last minute. Craig will take 4th. Tom's going to finish ahead of Mike, so this could be also important in the title fight for the independents, as Tom is going to finish just ahead of Mike. Literally just finished ahead. Tom's 5th, Mike is 6th, so that was very close as well. Rob's going to come away. Whoa, so something's happened with Rob and Gary. Gary takes 8th, and we'll have a look at that. Mark takes 9th, and of course Heathy is going to come away with a frustrating 10th, as he started fairly well, but just hasn't managed to get that Subaru settled. Let's look at these final corners then between Josh and Kieran and see from the outside how that race winning dive worked. So Kieran was quite a way behind. It just, look at that, almost defies physics really, as he came away and won the race. Let's watch on board with Josh. Look at that. There was a nudge, but it wasn't enough to push Josh off the track. So let's watch Rob and Gary on these last few corners, and it was Rob who hits the gravel. Then all of a sudden Gary goes really wide. Not sure quite. Let's have a look on the onboard. So on board with Gary, and there's Rob down onto the gravel. Gary just goes to avoid Rob to try and get that 7th, and doesn't work out. A fantastic debut win for Kieran Thomas in the FeckWrest touring cars there, just ahead of Josh in second. Joe takes a very, very strong podium position in third. Craig takes fourth, Tom was fifth, Mike was sixth, Rob seventh, Gary was eighth, Mark was ninth, Stephen Heath was 10th, and Harry, of course, does not finish, retires with more technical problems at the back. What this means then for the points going into the final race of the season, of course, Craig has already won with 513. Tom is now second with 363, 1 point ahead of Darren. Of course, he can score more points. Josh is fourth with 323. Mike is fifth with 320, and Mark is sixth with 308. Kieran has jumped up to 7th with 261, Rob 8th 249, and Stephen is now 245 in 9th, with Sam down in 10th with 240 after not scoring any points. In the teams, Elliot, of course, 897, Parker 667, behind K-Tech with 769, so we've already decided where those finishing positions are. In the independents then, this is how it will look going into the final race. Currently in the lead is Mark still with 447. Second is Mike now with 433. Josh is still third with 429. But obviously if you look at that, only 4 points behind Mike, and Mike himself is only 14 points behind Mark. And with double points on offer, anything can happen. And all the cars will be on their soft tyres, so it's a race for the flag essentially. Stephen is out the question now with 357.